I've spent a lot of time in my life using music as an outlet for a lot of the stuff that's going on inside. It's also gotten to the point now that some of my own issues with like anxiety and depression and all of that, they're getting in the way of me using this art form and this outlet, getting bogged down and never actually getting around to it. I want to be able to share some of those more vulnerable things. So I just exited this office building over here. I'm not even sure if you can see it properly. That was my first session with what seems to be my new therapist. I think the session was great. I think I found a good fit, finally, for this part of my mental health journey. Hi, I'm Max, and that was a heck of a really vulnerable thing to use as the first way to introduce myself to this audience, I guess. But at the same time, when I think about the goal of this project here, I want to be able to share some of those more vulnerable things. Obviously, I'm not gonna like trauma dump, you know, everything I'm going through in therapy, but I want to be able to share these kinds of moments and relate that to my story, my journey, my life as an artist, as a creative, as a musician, and any number of other identity markers you want to throw in there. I am now embarking on this journey. I mean, I've done this before, but I'm like re-embarking on this journey of trying to sort out what's going on in here with more than just the resource of music. I've spent a lot of time in my life using music as an outlet for a lot of the stuff that's going on inside, and obviously it's a powerful outlet, it's a powerful tool, but at the same time there's only so much it can do. Music can't fix everything, and I think it's also gotten to the point now that some of my own issues with like anxiety and depression and all of that, they're actually getting in the way of me being able to have a creative process, and they're getting in the way of me practicing, and they're getting in the way of me using this art form and this outlet. Something that I realized recently was that some of my most like explosively cathartic pieces of music that I've ever written were written kind of like after the fact, like written after I had taken some time to process certain things that I'd been through. And it was only when I was able to look back at issues I'd faced before and look at them from a standpoint of safety, from a vantage point where I felt like I'm not gonna fall back into it by looking at it, then I was able to like really mine those emotions for riffs and melodies and musical ideas and really get in there and be like, okay, what does that feeling sound like? I let myself get into this headspace where I was thinking music is an outlet for what you're going through while you're going through it, and that's not necessarily true. A friend of mine who is, you know, a creative writer, a poet, she'll often publish these just incredible poems to her website, and she'll share them, and she'll have people in her life reach out to her and be like, hey, are you okay? Like, oh my gosh, did this just happen to you? And she's like, no, this is like a mishmash of something that happened to me 10 years ago, something I was thinking about last week, and this concept I read about in a book, and I put them all together and expressed that as a poem. It doesn't mean that every time I write a poem, I'm going through that exact thing literally 10 seconds before I hit publish. That's not how this works. There is this gap between the realities that artists describe and the reality that manifests itself in the art. They're both real, but not in the same way, not in the same sense. Sometimes artistic exaggeration or recombination of things that didn't happen at the same time, or synthesizing similar types of experiences that happened with different people, that is its own form of honesty. It's not literal, but it gets at the heart of an issue. So I think that me and therapy are at this point going to be a good pairing to make sure that I am able to do my art and to have that outlet in a way that's not going to be excessively frustrating. You know, it's gonna stop me from like getting bogged down and never actually getting around to it. So we'll see how that goes.
Taken hostage from skies where I once flew. My heart is chained and my wings removed. Tethered to the earth, taking undesired root. The heavy fettered birth from seed to bitter fruit.
I want to let you in a little bit on the process I had for this one song in particular that ended up being really reflective of stuff I was going through in my life at the time. But it took me a lot of effort and a lot of rethinking and coming to certain realizations before I was actually able to properly write and finish the song.
Now I'm running out of time at my limit, wondering why I'm always running out of time again. Now I'm barely keeping pace, stuck somehow running in place. Everything I chase left me behind.
So it had been this weird stretch of time that we all went through, 2020 to 2021, this kind of continuous year that felt like, well, 2 years that felt like 1 year all kind of mashed together. But if you're anyone who was paying attention to anything during that stretch of time, you know that the whole world went through a lot. And so me living in another city from my bandmates made it very difficult for us to get together and rehearse, never mind the fact that rehearsal spaces, rental spaces, studios were all closed. So it wasn't like it was easy to get the whole band together to jam and work on songs. So we're doing what we normally would do anyways, working long distance, sending demos back and forth, recording at home on our own time, sending our parts back and forth, and building on what each other have made. And two of the other guys in my band, Jared and Jericho, they had demoed out these riffs, these guitar parts, and a drum part. And I was like, okay, we're gonna take this, we're gonna flesh it out into a full song. And the instrumental part came really easily. The instrumental was like a no-brainer, in part because they had written the entire structure of the whole song. So it was there, it had an identity of its own, and I was just adding in little extra guitar parts here and there, and kind of some keyboards, and this song ended up having a bunch of East Asian and Southeast Asian instrument samples in it in the background. They're kind of faint, but if you really pay attention, you can catch them. So all of that came together really easily. What was difficult for me was the lyrics, and specifically trying to come up with a topic. You'd probably think like, really? During the pandemic, during 2020 and 2021, you couldn't find any topics to sing about? But that was kind of the problem, right? There was so much going on in the world, and so much of it was like drawing my attention and holding it like really intensely, as I think is probably true for a lot of people, that I didn't know what to pick. Something I realized during that process of trying to figure it out and demoing out and like writing out all of these lyric ideas, I realized that like in trying to think outwardly, what do people want me to talk about? What do people think I should sing about? What kind of things does the world deserve to hear from me, right? In doing that, I kind of stifled my ability to actually tune in to what I was really feeling. And it's not to say that there were no topics relevant to the world at the time that mattered. There were. It's just that I was trying to take other concerns, things that I thought people would want me to talk about, topics that seemed like they'd be good to talk about, and trying to force them to fit in a piece of music that didn't feel like what those topics felt like. So what I was thinking was, I'm gonna take a topic that's relevant to what the world is going through right now. Maybe racial justice, maybe police brutality, maybe climate change, maybe any number of other things that, you know, are very, very pressing issues that are facing everybody. And what I wanted to do was use the majority of the song to kind of describe whatever problem or cluster or grouping of problems I ended up picking, and then let it build up to this ending section. The ending of the song had a lot of energy to it, although, as you'll see in a second, I wasn't interpreting the energy correctly. My initial thought was, I'm gonna describe this problem, this social issue, and I'm going to get to the end, and there's gonna be this rousing, inspiring call to action where we're gonna be like, everybody, let's band together and address this. Yeah. The problem is that that section sounded like this. It was abysmal and dark and ominous and heavy and punishing. And I was trying to essentially do something with this feeling that wasn't what that feeling was for. Now, at the time, the job I was working from home like most people, although that was the nature of my work before lockdown started. But I was working from home doing a lot of writing and content creation, video editing, that kind of stuff. As most people who worked from home during the pandemic probably know, the work from home situation really messed with the rhythm of work, the rhythm of having a process, and generally everyone's sense of time. And I realized eventually that the way I was struggling to stay on top of tasks, or the way I was struggling to feel like I was doing enough at work and getting enough done, and not really being able to get in touch with my coworkers, so feeling completely out of sorts or disoriented or unsure if things were finished or if people had questions or I needed to revisit something. That kind of disconnection from people and from time and from a work rhythm, all of that was really starting to mess with my head and starting to bring my mental health down. And I couldn't find the way to balance out time between work and creative work, stuff for my band, songwriting, all of that stuff.
Reflecting on today, it seems like such a waste. Feel like I've done nothing, all the things I did, but drowning in a million better things I should have been. My scattered thoughts have once again led me in this unsettled state.
So at some point, I realized that what I was going through, this struggle to balance out personal life from work life while working from home, the struggle to focus on things or feel like I was getting things done or connecting with the people I was involved in projects with enough to know that we were meeting our goals, all of that I realized was stuff that other people were probably also going through. And so while the other topics I had been toying with are important topics, and I did end up writing some other material coming soon, I hope, I was doing this particular song a disservice by trying to force it to be something that it wasn't. I had to learn how to trust my intuition as a songwriter and learn how to just follow the feeling, recognizing both the feeling of the piece that I'm working on and the material I've got to work with. What does that feel like? What does that elicit in me? And then also follow the feeling of what I'm actually going through right now. Because just because something outside of myself is actually important and deserves to be commented on doesn't necessarily mean that I'm ready to do it, or I'm in a healthy space to do it, or I know enough to do it. Just because something deserves comment doesn't mean that you have all the insight you need right now, or that you have the right tool to address it. In this case, I didn't have the right music to do a rallying cry to, address global issues, something like that. I didn't have that sound. I didn't have that vibe. I had this oppressive, dark, heavy laden, ominous thing. And once I embraced that for being what it was, once I said, okay, it's okay if it's that, and it's okay if the song feels like that, it set me free to write the song that it ended up being.
Fixated, time wasted, I hate the way my mind is made. Fixation,
realized that for as much as I've got some screamies in me, I didn't have a brutal enough voice for what this needed to feel like, so we got a guest vocalist to come in as well, and he did just this phenomenal job making the song sound like 20 times heavier than it would have been if it was just me trying to accomplish that on my own. I've worked on my gutturals and my Cookie Monster voice since then, and I think I've improved it. But it was great to get like the right guest vocalist on there. It's just the right fit. But yeah, that was, to me, I think, one of the most awesome learning moments when it comes to songwriting and just to creativity in general. Realizing that I can continuously learn to trust myself, continuously learn to acknowledge things for what they actually are, recognize when I'm willing and able to make a meaningful statement on something, and when my reality is just pushing me in a different direction. If you're making art, or if you are navigating relationships, or you're trying to figure yourself out, or any number of things, consider, I'm not saying you have to do this, but consider whether or not you're actually following the feeling, following the reality, following what is actually right there in front of your face. The answer might be right there, staring at you. And it's okay to just trust that and go with what's obvious sometimes. Yeah. Hi, buddy. Can you go lay down? Lay down on your bed? Can you go? Rocky, I put your bed next to where I'm filming. Can you go lay down? Okay, okay. Not even gonna lay down on your bed, just beside it. That's fine. Dogs.
Throw it away to the wind.